to the office that it needs.
I call the Honourable Member Gareth Hughes.
Kia ora, Mr Speaker. Ngā mihi nui koutou. Kia ora. I rise on behalf of the Green Party to support the motion. The Green Party supports the appropriation through the report table from the Officers of Parliament Commission, and we agree with the statement made by the Leader of the House, Jerry Brownlee, that it's important to maintain the independence, and the Officers of Parliament Committee using its function under the Public Finance Act to provide recommendations for the appropriations for these three officers. So, Mr Speaker, the Officers of Parliament Committee report table shows the detail for each of the three votes. The committee heard submissions from the three officers, and essentially the officers of the Auditor General, the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, and the Ombudsman received the funding they requested. Now, another member who's on the committee may like to clarify this point if I'm incorrect, but to clarify for the member Grant Robertson, as I understand it, the $1 million figure was raised in the Financial Review and the Government Administration Committee, but the Ombudsman was only requesting $300,000 in the Officers of Parliament Committee. But I acknowledge the point made that there's a significant context and an environment in which these officers are involved in, and that is we are seeing significant cuts to the public sector, and that stress which we're seeing in those officers is also shared across the wider public sector with lowering morale at the moment. So we'd like to acknowledge the role of the Auditor General, the two Ombudsmen, the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, Jan Wright, but also the staff and their officers. We think they do good work. They're important to our democracy. Looking at the Ombudsman first up, the two roles there by the two Ombudsmen are important work for our democracy. Monitoring complaints for the Official Information Act, their important corrections role. I note that if there was if we ever run into funding problems in the future and we have to have a sponsorship run wooden spoon sort of awards evening for complainees of the local government and the Official Information Act, it'll be the Prime Minister who's getting the wooden spoon award presented by the Ombudsman for the record for the last financial year for 15 complaints. Mr Speaker, what we're seeing is unfortunately very poor timeliness met by the Ombudsman Office. They wanted and aimed to complete 90% of all matters within a month, but they only completed 66. And in all those key performance indicators around timeliness, unfortunately, the office is failing to meet them. Not because of the dedication of the staff or because of the dedication of the staff, simply because of lack of resources. What we're seeing, and we heard in the Financial Review report of the Ombudsman, was that they're quite literally sinking under the weight of complaints. The baseline funding works on the assumption they'll be dealing with 800 to 1,000 cases. What we've seen in the last financial year is 1,854 cases, and in some periods as high as 2,000. They're sinking under the weight of complaints. Unfortunately for the staff, they haven't seen a pay rise since 2007. I think that's scandalous, Mr Speaker. They haven't seen a pay rise since 2007, yet backbenchers in this chamber over the equivalent period have seen a pay rise of 12.3%. It's not fair, and what we want to see is good baseline funding so we can pay these people appropriately. Now, Mr Speaker, thirdly, what we're also seeing is the Office of the Ombudsman unable, because of a lack of resources, to promote their services to the public. So we welcome the report of the Officers of Parliament Committee to advise the Government to amend Section 17 of the Ombudsman's Act. We welcome that legislation. We welcome hearing submissions in Select Committee, how we can streamline it. But the key thing we can't lose is that the Ombudsman is actually the last place people can go. We have to make sure that last place is protected. So looking at the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, we'd like to acknowledge the quality work of Jan Wright and also her office. I particularly was impressed by the lignite report. The recent water report is a significant topical issue, and it's good to see the PCE engage in that debate, and I wholeheartedly welcome the fracking report. Pity we can't see what would be the responsible step, which is a moratorium till the Parliamentary Commissioner reports back, but we'll keep campaigning on that. But the biggest challenge, and what the Green Party would like to offer to this debating chamber, is the biggest challenge their office is facing is the new role of environmental monitoring. It's been signalled well through the media that environmental monitoring will be shifting from the Ministry for the Environment to the Office of the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment. The Green Party thinks it's on balance, a pretty good idea. You've got MFE responsible for policy and regulation. It makes sense to have a separate body responsible for monitoring. It's an appropriate agency. I think they do have the skills, but what they lack is the resources. And the challenge for their officers, they're likely to be lumped with this task for next year, but they haven't been able to get any extra appropriation to start gearing up for the significant new workload because there's no legislation. So we'd like to offer to the government benches that we'd like to support that legislation. We hope that we can see that legislation soon, because we'd like to engage with it, get it cracking, get it passed, so we can see that office prepare and do quality work on the environmental monitoring. So in summary, Mr Speaker, the Green Party supports the recommendations in the report, the appropriations, and glad to be essentially giving baseline funding and other additional funding increase to these officers, but like the Labour Party, also think they're not enough to do the important work needed, and we'd like in future years to be granting more significant funding increases for these very important officers. Kia ora.
I call the Honourable Member Chris Hipkins.
Thank you.